every time I have this conversation about empowering women, there keeps coming back this conversation, what about the men? What about the men? And it does seem to me that we as a society are creating a lost generation of men.
Agreed.
And I hear this not just from people like yourselves, and I listen carefully to what you're saying, and other people, your peers, but even my husband has said to me, you know what, Trudes, when is someone going to pay attention to men, and men who need to, and you mentioned about crying after a particularly powerful sports event, and about men needing to engage. We know that suicide in men is far more in Malta than women.
Yeah.
We know that it's on the rise. We know that COVID had a devastating effect on that. So I'm coming to you as a guy who's connected with more men than women in your podcast. You connect with a majority of men. What is this issue that's going on right now for this, what I would refer to as this lost generation of men? What's happening and why is it happening?
So this is a massive question that has historical issues hewn into it, sociological ones, and also, in a sense, also theological ones. So men lost their role in society, right? For good or worse, and it's a mixed bag. Men kind of knew what was expected of them, right? They had, they're the providers, they're the protectors, and they had at least, even though this was could have been very oppressive for some males, for most males, it was very much like, okay, that's the direction in which I should go, and that's my role, and this is what I do. That, as we all know, in the modern era, has completely exploded because a woman can provide for herself. She, the things that were required of the man within the context of the family unit are no longer a necessity. So men are now kind of stuck in this limbo. That comes at the tail end of literally millennia within our DNA being those types of people. Now society is telling us, well, we don't need those types of people. Like, we don't need the aggression anymore, and we don't need the protector anymore. We don't need. So obviously, because for every generation, except 2 or 3 that precede our own, men had a very straightforward role. Now we're kind of like in a hangover, and we're very disoriented. What do you hear most people that go to therapists say? They say, I'm lost, because we don't have a direction. This is why, for example, nowadays, jiu-jitsu clubs are rammed with people, CrossFit clubs are rammed with men, because I think mankind in general, but I speak to the issue of men, mankind has a natural proclivity for sacrifice. We like one of the main things that makes our society as incredible as it is, and we can debate whether it's better or worse, but by my estimation, it's a better society. One of the reasons that is that as a species, we have the capacity of sacrificing, doing things that we don't like to do now, so that the future will be better, right? And men and women, but men in their own way, particularly in physical ways, in ways that test your endurance and mental and physical strength, used to have that role, and that used to gratify us a lot. So now what I'm seeing is that since there isn't, this space no longer needs to be occupied by men are making the fatal and literally fatal mistake of remaining children, of remaining boys. There's a growing prevalence of what's called the Peter Pan syndrome, where they refuse to take on the adult form of their being, right? They remain wanting to, date multiple women and cheat on women and do drugs and there's a reason for this, which is also tied into the cultural disdain for sacrifice. Nowadays, what's being championed mainly in our culture is, oh, you should do what makes you happy. You should do what makes you happy, which on a level sounds right. It sounds right. But if you don't espouse happiness with good values, then that happiness can come from a line of coke. It can come from cheating on your wife. It can come from all kinds of antisocial behaviors that become ultimately self-destructive, destructive for your family, and socially destructive. And I think men are suffering because the world, because of all these things, and also because the world has now entered an epoch historically where more, more of a feminine temperament is needed now. And men, for a long time, if we didn't have a masculine temperament leading, I feel we would not get where we would have gotten, because you needed the men to go and, I don't know, fight the enemy at the gate. You needed the men to go and, kill the wolves if they're coming for your baby. You needed the men to lay tracks across the entire continent of America. You needed men to do all of these physical things. But now that we've got into a place where we've remodeled the world in a way that is far safer and far more welcoming to us, to our propensity as human beings, now all these masculine traits aren't as necessary. In fact, they can be very detrimental, because now, as we know, men are far more competitive, far more aggressive. Now we have an issue where, we can destroy ourselves. Like we have that level of technological armaments, right? You don't want masculine standoffs when we are that well kitted out to destroy one another. So now I think there's a motion, or rather there's a transition of the type of temperament we need to push the world forward. I think we need more empathy in the world. I think the next revolution we need is an empathic revolution. And I also think that men should not, I think men and women, sometimes I get this from women, where you get a sense that they resent male aggression or they resent male strength. I think that's still necessary. I think that is still necessary, but we need to identify ways in which courage and just a general masculine fortitude is still useful in this world. And I think there is still a lot of room for that, but we need to pay a lot of attention on how to hone it, and we need to tell men and people in general that the most important thing is not pleasure but purpose. Have a purpose. If you have a purpose, you will know what direction you need to go to at all times, even when it's fucking shit, even when you feel miserable and you feel like a failure, but you know which way is north, and you will keep walking into that northern direction. So we need to reinstill men with a new sense of purpose. That is.
But you see, now we've created this very complicated dynamic, and it's not just between men and women. There's a whole bunch of other complications to the gender definition going on at the moment as well. But we have created, I mean, as I said to you, I'm going through a position of empowering women. Now, I would never want that to be at the detriment of a woman having a great relationship with a guy, and men in general. It's about redefining it, but I think I absolutely agree. I can't see a world without men being powerful and strong. We, as women, need men to be powerful and strong. But unfortunately, what's happened is what you've just described is opening this massive void for role models like Andrew Tate or like Donald Trump to come along, who are the absolute antithesis of what is going to create a way forward for us as a human race, based on you saying that the world needs to have more empathy. You look at someone like Andrew Tate or Donald Trump or these very strong masculine figures who maybe 20, 30 years ago we'd have gone, yeah, whatever. And now they're filling the void. They're creating their own problems. So how do we find a solution to this lost gender generation of men?
I think the Tate phenomenon is very interesting. It's because Tate is analytically correct. Huh? He did his when he combed society to see what's going on with men. He understood it perfectly.
But this is the same with Donald Trump as well. There's an element of truth in exactly what they're saying. You can't deny that. There's an element, and any of these very strong masculine role models, there's an element of truth. But when you take that element of truth and then you blow it out of proportion into something else.
I think the prescription is then, so let's separate the two, because I'm not that familiar with Trump, or maybe, I'd rather let's try and think of one person at a time. So Tate, analytically, is correct. He's saying everything that me and you are saying, which is men are lost, men don't have purpose, men are killing themselves in droves, and men ought to, like he says, things that resonate even with me sometimes. Well, just don't expect thanks. Like even if you're feeling like shit, just go and do what you know you ought to be doing. That's true. That's like that. I've implemented that into my life, not because of Andrew Tate, but because for other reasons, and it worked. But what has Andrew Tate also done? Prescriptively, this is where the fuck up is with Andrew Tate. He has fed the most primal part of us, which is the need for domination. So he will tell you, this terrible feeling you have? Look, first of all, get your shit together. And then once you get your shit together, make sure you assert the dominance over the other sex, because you ought to be dominant. And that starts resonating with a very primal part of us, because even when we were chimps, we wanted to dominate. Us being part of a social hierarchy is who we are as social beings. So when you have someone that is, that is doing seemingly as well as Andrew Tate, telling you that, and there's something that evolution has hewn into you, which is like the darker part of you, but it's there, and it's something that the moment you speak to it, it wakes up. And as we see with Andrew Tate, it's woken up millions of young men that were feeling lost, and that were given a direction by Andrew Tate based on this evolutionary need to feel strong, to feel empowered. But obviously, we're pursuing that at the detriment of an entire other sex, which is like the female sex, and my understanding. Now, I'm not some relationship guru. I barely graduated Form 5. But my estimation is that men and women, while there is tension between me and my wife, there is a tension going on, but that tension is underpinned by cooperation, right? We have goals together. And those may be material in the sense of like real world goals, or just like let's communicate better, right? But we don't agree how we're going to get there, right? But we have the same goal. We want the same outcome, and we want the best for one another. We don't want to destroy each other. I don't want to subjugate my wife. I don't want to live my life with a fucking slave. I want to live my life with royalty, or someone that I look up to, and that's the partner I want. I don't want someone that's a broken shell of a woman just walking around the house gloomily. I want someone that will be a countervalence to me, but in the spirit of wanting to better ourselves as individuals, our relationship, get closer to our outcomes, raise our kids better together. I also think, and this may or may not be controversial with the audience, that I think we've done way too much to undermine the family unit.
What if you could start your journey over? Start here and start again there. That's how life works, in a circular way. We understand the importance of circles, and that's why you are at the heart of ours. Find your way to wellness with Browns.